Okay. So hi everyone, good afternoon. So this is my last report in ENSTO for issues in aquatic resource management, maximum sustainable yield. So maximum sustainable yield or MSY, it's for a given fish stock means that the highest possible annual catch that can be sustained over time by keeping the stock at the level producing maximum growth. So hypothetically, okay, we should be aiming for equilibrium, for being balanced, wherein we are having our resources, but not degrading the abilities or the natural capacities of our environment. So maximum sustainable development plays a very vital role in our livelihood system. So in this graph, we have the total catch and the year. So what happens is that the total catch, sometimes it can decline because of some environmental factors. So the total catch can decline. But over the years, okay, or sometimes it's increasing or it's being maintained. But throughout the years, as we progresses, the fishing effort is now increasing, or they have these advanced technologies that they are using. So that results the number of fishermen is increasing and the number of boats is increasing, as well as the size and added technologies that makes the fishing industry na mas mabilis. So what happens is that there is the increase in our fishing efforts. With that, if there are more fishing efforts and there is no increase, okay, in a specific time, increase in the catch, so there is a clear sign that the population of fish is declining. So with that, we should be able to tackle MSY, or the maximum sustainable development, so that we know how to get our resources to have the highest catches of fish, but maintaining the population of fish at our stocks to replenish itself, to reach their sexual maturity state. So another aspect of MSY is to sustain our livelihood system, but of course to help our environment not to have these negative impacts. So in this graph, we have our population and our time. So as time passes by, for example, in that given time, the population is small, but there is enough fish reproducing. As time progresses, as the population increases, more fish meets, they are now reach the sexual maturity and the population rises faster. And for this, okay, then the growth will slow down because of the lack of resources. Okay, if there are more of the population, okay, of fishes, then there is the high demand of the nutrients present on our water bodies. So the resources from the habitat will be scarce. Okay, there will be the lacking of resources. So what happens is that we have in our carrying capacity, and if we are in this line, okay, that's low population, so meaning low growth rate. So if we are having high population, so it can also result to low growth rate because of the lacking of resources, lacking of nutrients and foods by our fishes, by our fish. And the best place, okay, to have is our mid population, where we can have the high growth rate. So I want to emphasize that on this line, okay, we can achieve our carrying capacity. So in this graph, I am showing you on the both axes, the growth rate and our population. This pertains to the low population is equal to low growth rate, and high population is equal to low growth rate, but in the middle, it's the high population growth rate. So let's have a simulation of how we should be maintaining the number of fish catch. For example, we have this number of fish we have in our population, we have in our aquatic bodies. So as time passes by, they will have its ability to replenish themselves to reach sexual maturity, and they can produce this number of fishes. So you can see the vertical, okay, on the vertical line, the number of fishes that our stock can reproduce. So if we're going to catch that, okay, so our population will not be, there will be no adding, okay, of number of species from our stock because we catch them all, okay? So next, if we're going to catch some, okay, and not all, so we retain 3, okay, hypothetical. So what will happen is that these 3 remaining fishes will be added to our water bodies, to our stock. And as time passes by, so this number of fishes will reproduce, okay, you can see that they will reproduce more, and thus we can catch, okay, we can catch more. And some of the fishes can also be on our stock. So the more stock that you have, the more fish, the more fish you can reproduce. So you can also get that catch and then have the remaining one. However, if we have or if we exceed the number of fish catch, okay, so you can see that we are now on the above, okay, line for our carrying capacity, for our maximum sustainable yield. So what will happen is that there will be the need to get fishes, to get fish from our population, just to sustain, just to have, okay, just to obtain the number of fish that you are subjecting into. So if that practices happens, so the population will now decrease. Okay, for example, on that line, time will come that the stock, okay, will not be evident anymore. Okay, that's a possible scenario. So therefore, we can include that on this left side of our graph, if you take below the line, so the population will rise by the next period. So we must be doing the fishing methods, okay, doing the fishing activities below that line, okay, before the MSY. On the other hand, if you take above the line, the population will fall by the next period. And this one, okay, inside of our line, it's the sustainable one. That's the sustainable practices. That's the theme. Okay, that's our aim, having sustainability. But if, okay, so that line, it represents equilibrium of our catches. But if we exceed our catch on our line, so if you taken an amount of fish in this area, the population will decline and might collapse. So that line is what we call as the maximum sustainable yield. So if stock is maintained at half its carrying capacity, the population growth rate is fastest, the sustainable yield is greatest. So we need to understand this MSY with the help of some concepts like stock biomass, fishing yield, and fishing rates. So when we say biomass, this is simply the body weight of all the fish of one specific stock in the water. So the biomass, it doesn't include some specification like the age, gender of our fish, just the body weight. Our yield is the catch, okay, the fish that is being taken out of the water for commercial purposes, for fishing. And the MSY is your maximum sustainable yield, the largest yield or the largest catch that a fisher folk can obtain, okay, but over an indefinite period of time, but maintaining the constant environmental conditions. So letter F stands for our fishing mortality rate. So the catch relative to the size of the stock, the proportion of fish caught and removed by fishing. So hypothetically, so once we remove fish, okay, from our water bodies, so that is also considered as mortality, as well as when the fish dies because of some illegal methods or because of environmental occurrences. So that's also fishing mortality. But when talking about biomass maximum sustainable yield or BMSY, so that is the biomass that you need in order to still obtain that maximum sustainable yield. So BMSY, that is the population size at the point of maximum growth rate. And FMSY, that is the fishing mortality, but still can help you to have or to attain the maximum sustainable yield. So reaching MSY, reaching maximum sustainable yield, means rebuilding fish populations to the biomass maximum sustainable yield level in order to be able to support the level of annual catches known as MSY. So we have this formula to better understand MSY. So the biomass, MSY, it's all about the biomass of your fish. So and the FMSY, it's all about the fishing mortality, but then they are all capable of helping you to still attain the maximum sustainable yield. So able for you to get the fishing mortality, the F sub MSY, so you need to divide the maximum sustainable yield divided by the biomass sustainable yield. The fishing mortality sustainable yield, they are inversely proportional to our biomass MSY. So meaning if our biomass is increasing, we have an increased number of biomass, so meaning that our fishing mortality will be lessened. Okay, that will be decreased. On the otherwise, if we're going to increase our fishing mortality rate, so our biomass will decrease in number. However, it is the fishing mortality MSY and the maximum sustainable yield that are directly proportional with each other. So if we have number of catch or increased number of catch, so basically that accounts to mortality, right? Even if we sell that in the market, that's mortality of our fishes. So the relationships is that the FMSY and the MSY, the maximum sustainable yield, they are directly proportional. So if one ascends, the other ascends. On the other hand, it is the biomass. The biomass MSY is indirectly proportional with our FMSY. So when is a fish stock overfished, and what is overfishing? So the fish stock is overfished when the biomass, okay, the biomass of our fishes is below the maintaining, okay, the maximum sustainable yield biomass. So in that situation, if we are experiencing overfishing, we are not able to produce the maximum sustainable yield, okay? Because many of the fisher folks or the private company focuses on a single time catch, not the overtime, that the one that will be maintained the production. Overfishing occurs when more than the sustainable share is taken out of a given stock when the fishing rate is above FMSY. So the fishing rate is above the mortality rate. And reaching MSY means implementing a management policy that rebuilds the stock to the biomass maximum sustainable yield level within a chosen time frame. So how can overfish stock be brought to a level where it can produce the maximum sustainable yield? So in order for that to happen, the fishing rate, okay, the fishing rate has to be set at FMSY or below. So they should be similar with one another. They should have the relationship of being proportional with each other. The fishing rate, okay, the fishing rate should be, okay, has to be set at the mortality of our fishes, of our fish. So with that, I just want to emphasize again the relationships of this variable, that the biomass maximum sustainable yield and the mortality maximum sustainable yield, they are inversely proportional, and the maximum sustainable yield and the fishing and the mortality maximum sustainable yield, they are directly proportional. So about regulations, setting catch or quota, individualized catch quota for each fisherman. So we have the quota, and whatever the quota is, that will be divided to our fisher folks. And setting fishing effort limits and using techniques like aquaculture. So that's it. That's the end of my report. I hope that you learned something. Thank you.